What statistically improbable thing happened to you? Many years ago, I had a terrible day where my then GF broke up with me, then I did terribly in a final exam for a college class, then I lost my wallet, and finally, as I was doing the Charlie Brown sad walk back home, some random branch broke off a tree as I was walking on the sidewalk underneath it, and the damn thing fell on top of me and hit me square across the shoulder and knocked me to the ground. I just burst out laughing because it was so ridiculous. I received my heart transplant after being on the list for only 7 hours. I was on a road trip with my cousins in the 80s. One of them kept playing the same song over and over by rewinding the tape and playing it again. The song was Another One Bites the Dust. After 3 plays in a row, the driver pulls out the tape, says enough, and turned on the radio. Sure enough, that song was playing on the radio right then. Not me, but a friend. He was a merchant mariner. Lived here in Virginia Beach. He was always calling and texting, posting pics from around the world. One time he'd been out a while, we knew he was heading to Dubai, but didn't know where he'd be after that. 4 months go by, nobody's heard from him. His neighbor, who I was friends with, gets married and goes to Thailand for his honeymoon. He texts me one day and said, "You aren't gonna believe this shit." He said he asked a local where a good local spot to eat was that tourists wouldn't be at. Guy takes him 30 minutes from the beach to some dive bar/restaurant with no sign, no clearly marked entrance. He said it looked so shady he was afraid he was about to be robbed and killed. He goes in, and it's a legitimate restaurant. He eats, drinks some beers, goes to the bathroom. Out walks my friend, so he took a pic and sent it to me to confirm he's okay. Imagine taking a flight several thousands of miles away, getting away from the tourist areas and going into a local dive bar, and running into your fucking next door neighbor you haven't seen in months. Shit's wild. Husband and I visited our old hometown and went to a used bookstore we used to frequent. I picked up a familiar title in nostalgia and flipped it open to find a school student's ID card. The name and photo on the ID? My husband. Turns out his mom had donated books to that store many years before we all moved away from that area. He must have been using it as a bookmark and forgotten. It's not so surprising, considering we used to live in that area, but the ID was nearly 10 years old by the time we found it. That book was sitting on the shelf for nearly a decade untouched, waiting for me to come along and pick it up. Bizarre. I underwent a surgical procedure called a stapectomy to improve the significant hearing loss in my good ear. Instead, I ended up completely deaf. My surgical ENT said this has only happened to 5 patients in the US. He was doing research to try to help me afterwards. I don't know how true it is, but hey, lucky me. I got bit by a groundhog. I've never researched the odds of getting bit by a groundhog, but it's gotta be pretty low, right? I have all 10 childhood aces. I have grandparent unalived on both sides. I have drug addicts on both sides, severe mental illness on both sides. Somehow I didn't end up dead, overdosed, in a ditch, or without any technical extreme mental illness. I like to think video games and music keep me away from that stuff. Despite what my elementary school and middle school teachers might have believed. I got a college degree in aerospace engineering, one of the hardest degree programs from a semi-decent school. Pretty much beat every statistic in regard to my early childhood outcomes. Make no mistake, all the stuff I went through has left me emotionally crippled, but I mostly get by. I just want to say thank you to everyone that's read this. I really appreciate all the kind words. Also, I'm by no means thriving, it's a constant battle every single day to pick myself up and get up. My son died at 11 months old for 2.5 minutes. I got to hold him as he took his first breaths, hold him while he took his last breaths, and then got to hold him as he took his first breaths again. It's something as a mother I don't wish on anyone. It was by far the scariest night of my life. I'll never forget it, New Year's Eve 2007 in Fairbanks, Alaska. My son statistically was not supposed to survive the pregnancy. I nearly lost him 3 times in the first trimester. I started going into active labor at 20 weeks, got put on strict bed rest, and then developed preeclampsia. I also had hyperemesis through the whole pregnancy. I couldn't even hold down water and needed daily fluid and nutrition. I was 17 pounds lighter than my pre-pregnancy weight when I delivered him at 39 weeks. By all of that, he shouldn't be here now. To make things even weirder, the doctor that kept me from losing him in my pregnancy was the doctor that treated him in Alaska. A completely different hospital, all the way across the country from where we first met. It felt like divine intervention to see his face, and I knew deep in my soul my son was going to be okay. My son is a happy, healthy teenager now. I am sitting here crying thinking about that night. It definitely still feels like a gut punch when I think about it. Riding my bicycle on a commercial fishing pier as a kid, I lost control and rode off the edge with a 20-foot drop to exposed rocks at low tide. I tried to stop myself going over by planting my feet on the edge of the pier, but I knew my bike was too heavy. Somehow the bike stopped, halfway over at a 45-degree angle. However, now the seat was in the small of my back, preventing me from getting off, and I couldn't budge it at all to get the bike back up. A fisherman finally ran over to help me, and we decided he would pull me as hard as he could and I'd let the bike fall. I jumped to the side as he pulled me back to the pier, and it worked. However, my bike was still there, not moving at all. When I examined what had happened, there was a piece of rebar sticking out from the edge of the pier, bent upwards in an L shape, and it passed diagonally through the spokes of my front tire and completely wedged my bike in place. It was the only spot on the 300-foot-long pier with anything sticking out. I most certainly did not stop myself and my bike from going over. I was almost murdered in a case of mistaken identity. A guy came chasing after my car on the highway, waving his gun out the window. He eventually got in front of me, blocking my car, and stopped his car and got out. He came right up to my window, pointed the gun right at my head, looked me in the eyes, and said, "Sorry. Wrong chick," then got back in his car and drove away. I still have no idea who he was or who the right chick was. Moved from Ohio to Texas back in 2006 to be with my now wife. Was interviewing for my first career job, and one of the interviewers was not only from Ohio, she graduated from my university, and she went to the same high school as both of my parents, 2 hours away from that university, so not like they were in the same place, just a couple of years before them. I was swimming about 20 yards away from shore, where it is about 15 feet deep in Lake Erie. Water is a little cloudy, with my glasses on so I can see. A wave runner rushes past and the wake knocks off my glasses. I make a few dives. Try and mark my location with landmarks. Swim to shore, explain what happened, and ask people if they have a mask or goggles I can borrow. Someone does loan me their goggles. I swim out and dive about 20 times. I decide I am going to take 2 more dives, then end it and drive home to Chicago without being able to see. I go down and a base swims under me. I decide to follow it since I had never been so close to one other than fishing. It swam over my glasses. I shoot to the surface with my glasses in my hand. The beach erupts in cheers. Apparently the word got out. I was elated and stayed to camp and party with my friends, mostly old and a few new. I once met a guy who had been born on the same day as me, at the same hospital, and we both had similar birth names. His name was the first 4 of my name. We also weighed the same, and we found out later that we were born within minutes. If I was 12:02, he was 12 o'clock type close of each other. Also, we were both born 6 weeks early. Same color eyes and hair. Our moms worked at the same Walmart, and that's how we met. We lost contact a year or so after his mom quit. Sometimes I remember that kid and wonder how the fuck did that happen and how the fuck did we meet. It the stats on any of that, but it's gotta be pretty damn low. Yesterday, we went to Woodman's grocery store where we bumped into a family that are friends. Okay, not that improbable. But then we went to Aldi's. I wanted something only they sell, but that is the second grocery store. Bumped into the same family, weird. Afterward, we went to Lowe's, and now I am getting a little freaked out, but the same family was there also shopping. This is all in the course of 4 hours in Northwest Chicago area, so it's a big area. Not some small rural town. Thank you for watching, friend. Until next time, and remember to stay hydrated.